levels. And so the different crafting levels, this is level 1. When you start, you're at level 0, and then this is level 1. If I make one of these, craft, this is a stone table. Now guess what? If you are near a stone table, you get a bigger crafting window. If I walk away from it, it's a 2x2. If I get close to it, you have a 3x3, so you can make even more complicated crafting recipes. And here is the last crafting recipe I can show off. But I'm going to need a pickaxe in order to make this item. And it's a mine. Now, as you remember, whenever I enter the world, it shows on the top the surface. That shows you what dimension you're in. So if you switch to a different dimension, I'm going to code it so that every time you switch to a different dimension and enter a new one, it will show that on the top of the screen and show you what dimension you've entered. Now let's go near the stone table and use it to craft the last recipe that I've implemented in the game, which is the mine. And right now the mine doesn't do anything. You can place it down and it looks like that, and I might change the way it looks. And you can just pick it up, and that's it. So the mine doesn't really do anything. I'm right-clicking it, left-clicking it just breaks it and picks it up. There's not much you can really do with the mine yet. And I'm probably going to put the mine outside my house. I'm not going to just randomly walk into a mine. But yeah, so that's the game so far. There's really not much else going for it. There's not much in it yet. There's a lot going for it, because I can just keep adding new stuff. And I'm at the point now where the background of the game is finished. Like, all the back-end stuff is finished. And I'll show you some of the code right now for the game. There's also racing files, which, well, it's gone. And that's a glitch. But we'll deal with that. Oh, it's probably because of this file I had it opened. So it didn't want to it renames the file if you don't have it open. But I did have it open, so the game was like, what are you doing? I can't do anything with that. So now that bug should be fixed. But if you have no files, I'll just delete this one, honestly, because if you have no files, it'll just bring you to that screen. Because if you have no files, it's not going to give you an option to open a file that doesn't exist. So you just get to name your file and create one if you don't have any yet. So now I'm going to go into the code and show you a few things. And if you want to steal some of this code, I'll kind of show it, and if you want to use it for your own games. I took a lot of this code from online resources, like Stack Exchange. Stack Exchange is a really good resource. Okay, I want to put a pause in the video here, because I think I disconnected. And I think that the stream is going to reflect that pause, which is upsetting. So I'm going to restart. I'll have a pencil ready to cross things off as I go through. Yo, what's going on, gamers, coders, speedrunners, and all-around game enthusiasts? This is Joystick Justin here. Terrible intro. Yo, what's going on, gamers, coders, speedrunners, and all-around game enthusiasts? This is Joystick Justin here, and welcome to the first devlog for Project Adapt. Now I'll just get right into it and show you the game that I have so far. Here is your main menu, and I have this little background art, and biggest thing, if you see my previous game, you don't actually know, you might not know, that the previous game that I've made, you cannot resize the screen to whatever screen size you want. Now you can. Now it's fixed to a certain aspect ratio, so if you make the width or the height too small, you can see that it's adjusting this way, because it's adjusting in that direction, towards the right of the screen, if it gets too small. So, but you can just change the screen size, and it's pretty cool that you can do that. So now if I go to quit game, it just closes the game and turns it off, terminates the game. But yeah, so let's get into it. So when you go to single player, name your world. I'm going to call it Devlog. And create. Now, there's one world, but if I choose to make a new world, and I just say test, you can have an infinite number of worlds. So if I scroll down, you can see that this one goes up and test moves up a little bit. So if you have more, it'll show 4 worlds on this screen. So if you have more than 4 worlds, if you scroll down using your mouse scroll wheel, it will show worlds that are further down. And it will always show this top world. So let's enter this world, the surface. So that's what I've just made. It's remnants of having dimensions, and there's no dimensions yet, but that surface thing is showing that there are going to be dimensions eventually. You can also see there's biomes. So here's a river. Now it kind of looks like flat, kind of, but the river will bend and wind and turn around and do all that river stuff, stuff that rivers normally do. But yeah, so there's beaches, there's what I call these rocklands, and you can collect items. So there are a bunch of rocks here. I can't collect the big boulders, but I can collect the small stones. And I'm going to try to collect as many as I can to show you how to play the game. And it looks like we're in this world. Oh, this is an ocean instead of a river. You can tell it's an ocean because it's kind of more circular. And this ocean is a very small one, but there are huge oceans and there are small oceans. So this is kind of a meadow, and there are a bunch of different biomes. So you can see this one's a forest, a lot of trees in the forest. So yeah, I'm going to go back to the rockland because the main thing you want to start your game with is you need a bunch of stones. Primitive, cavemen, they need to smack stones together to do anything. So I'm going to just collect a bunch of stones, and I'm going to craft them together to make sharpened stones. And then the sharp stones can be used they're kind of like axes. So before, you can see that I can't break this, I can't break the rocks, those big boulders, but I also, you can see that I'm selecting this inventory slot, so I can't break the trees with that. But if I'm selecting, I'll move it up using my mouse scroll wheel. If I select that and then hit the tree, you can see that I break the tree. Now, let's do a crafting recipe. So here's a crafting. This part is the crafting window. This is your hotbar slots, and then that's just your inventory. So I'm going to craft those two together. This is the first crafting recipe. It's a tier 1 crafting upgrade. If I right-click it, it uses it and upgrades your crafting slots. So there's in total 3 levels of crafting. There's a 2x2, there's a 3x3, and then there's a 5x5. Actually, I think there's a 4x4 in the middle of there. There are 3 levels. So I think that there's no 4x4. It goes straight up to a 5x5. But anyway, so let's make a pickaxe. And an axe, for that matter, because I have the stuff in my inventory for it. So here's a pickaxe, and here's an axe. So over here, you can see files, and here's file 1, and then this is the information for the files. And here, there's a pick, and there's the axe. So if I go around and start hitting up some rocks, you'll start to notice that the pickaxe, the information in the text file, basically, each pickaxe can have a certain amount of information about it. Right now, there's just durability. And I will probably add a durability bar later on, but right now, you don't actually know what your durability is until eventually it just breaks. And then you have to craft a new pickaxe. But you can see here, this is 18 durability. If I go and use it 3 more times, 1, 2, 3, it should go down to 15. 18 minus 3 is 15, right? And the same goes for the axe. And then if I go and I choose to make another tool, like a pick, maybe an axe, whatever I choose to make, I'll make another axe. You can see that in the text files, it makes another text file, but it's called axe 2. So they're separate from each other. There's 20 there, and the first axe has 16 durability. So if I go around and keep on using this one, it will lower the durability there. And obviously, if I use the other one, now I'm selected the other one, so I've used that one twice, so I should have 18 durability, and I've used the other one a bunch more, so 11 durability. And if I take out enough trees with this one selected, eventually the axe will just disappear, the text file for it will also disappear, and then that's it. The axe is gone, it's run out of durability, it's just destroyed from existence. The only remnants you have of it are the items you got from using it. So I'm just going to go and break a bunch of trees and show you the other part of the game that I have. Okay, that axe is gone. And we might need some stones eventually, so we'll take some of those and craft the first item, a door. That's a wooden door. Let's move it to the hotbar. Another item we'll craft are a bunch of walls. So you get 4 per craft, as you can see. So there you go. Let's just build a house. A very simple house, a box. Players will probably be a lot more creative, and they might ask for me to add new tiles into the game, and if they do, I'll probably just gladly say yes. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's a 5. Up we go. And we need to make sure that there's nothing in those tiles in order to place the walls. And I can just right-click the door and go through it and back out through the other side. And so when it's open, it'll let you through. When it's closed, you can't get through. So then the other thing about the game is that the doors can be both directions. So if it sees that there is a wall above or below it, it gets placed in this orientation. And this does look funny, and I'll agree with you if you say that it looks funny, but I don't really know how else to do it. Because it looks like it's like upside down and sideways, but I don't really know how else to put a door down, because if the door, you can make the door get placed down like this by going like that and then putting walls beside it afterwards, but in this direction, it looks like the door is like blocking. It looks like the door is currently closed. You see? So I don't exactly know what to do, but it's part of the game development that you have to kind of figure out what you want to do. So here's another crafting recipe. That's a stone table. So if I'm not near a stone table, I have a 2x2. If I'm near the stone table, it's a 3x3, and that works if you're above it, beside it, below it, wherever you want to be. If I put the stone table in the middle of my house, if I just get near the stone table at all, it's gonna give me bigger crafting. But I have to be like right up against it. If I'm like slightly far away from it, it won't work. So, but obviously I'm probably gonna put the stone table right along a wall, and now you can make bigger crafting recipes. And that's basically all there is in the game at this point. So I'll show some of the code for the game, and we'll see how we go from there. So I guess the first thing I'm going to do is show the idea of multi-threading that I've used in the game. So here's my run method. So let's go over here. The game, this is the one with the main class. If I scroll to the bottom, this has the main method, which just initializes, it gets a few things going to make the game kind of look a little bit better. It's not the best, and it fixes a few weird looking rendering issues. So yeah, but then the game gets initialized. And so with multi-threading, what I've done, so you implement runnable over here, and then that allows you to use threads. So the synchronized void start, so start makes running true, which is used in the game loop. This is the game loop. While you're running, it loops through this, and then just loops through it multiple times. So thread 1 starts it. The first thread is started, and that's why in here, this is also remnants of me testing things. But the first thread gets started, and then you go and tick thread.start, which is this one. And it has its own thread, it's thread 2, and then you start that thread, and it makes it a new thread, start, second thread is started, and then it runs through this loop for the game. So, and then both of these loops look the exact same. The only difference is this is ticking, so that's updating things like position of things, or whether or not a button that's 3D is indented or not indented. And what I mean by that is if I hover over a button, it goes indented, and if I'm not hovering over it, it's like popping out of the screen versus getting pushed into the screen. So the ticks, there's a bunch of other things that the tick method does, but basically anything that's not rendering something to the screen gets handled in the tick thread. Because rendering takes a lot more juice from the computer than ticking. So as much as you can put into tick, you want to do that. Versus rendering. And so you can see that this is the remnants of me having only used one loop to run, tick, and render, and the game actually kind of started to get laggy when both of those were happening under one thread. So I'm using 2 threads. One to render, and the other one to tick. So this tick is commented out, which is kind of just showing that it was there before. And then the other thing that I have is there's a target FPS, and then there's an optimal time. This is nanoseconds, a bunch of stuff. Basically, what that means is you set your FPS to whatever value on here. So if I change this to 60, it would be a 60 FPS game. And what that does is, depending on what your time is, it sets to the new time, and then there's a wait, and that wait is basically telling the thread to sleep for a certain amount of time. And yeah, it sleeps for either 0 seconds. So if wait is a negative number, meaning that it wants to actually go faster than what the processor is able to do, then it won't wait at all. The thread will not sleep for any amount of time. This is 0 seconds. 0 milliseconds, it just won't sleep. And the same thing basically happens the exact same way for the second thread. So that's multi-threading. Then the next thing I want to show you is kind of the world generation. So over here, there's world generation. This uses what we call simplex noise. If you've heard of Perlin noise, simplex noise is similar to Perlin noise, but it's slightly different. And from what I've seen and heard and read up about it, it is also slightly more efficient. So basically, you have this really huge array of things, and it's a static. So that means it never changes. And you could probably add the word final to here, and you wouldn't really change anything. So basically, this is kind of setting up the game to render anything on the screen or any tile. So whenever you make a world, it basically makes it so that a river is next to a beach, or ocean's next to a beach, and then it like makes sure that the forest is like a big forest, and there's no like randomness in the world generation, basically. So it's random, but it's not random, if that makes sense. You'll have like a big chunk of forest, and then next to it you'll have a meadow, but there's not like a forest next to a meadow, right next to another forest, next to a rockland, and all those tiles are like right beside each other as different biomes. It kind of puts a big chunk of tiles to be the same biome. I hope that makes sense. And so I've coded it so that there are 3 types of noise. There's the water, which currently it's only used to generate oceans, and the rivers are actually generated using the chunk scale. Just basically, randomly, a river biome will just appear, and it usually will intersect with an ocean. And I can show that if I just follow a river long enough, it'll eventually probably lead to an ocean, and then it kind of looks like the river's flowing out of the ocean. And then the other one is just the tile. The smaller you make this number, the more noticeable the noise is going to be. So you'll very clearly see that there's a river next to a beach. But if you make this number really big, it'll be like a river, and then right next to that there's like a rockland. So they're not the same. And that's good for the tile scale, because this number, basically all it does is it takes in the seed of the world, and then uses it. This is pretty much making it so that whatever tile gets generated is completely random, but based on that chunk. So in a forest, it's all very, very small amount of nothing, very small amount of stones, and then a lot of trees. And so basically, this is basically random, but the reason why it's using the noise instead of randomness is so that you'll have the same tiles in each spot depending on your seed. So if I just use complete randomness, each seed would have slightly different tiles in each biome. But using this, you'll have tree tiles all in the exact same places in a forest biome if you're on the same seed. And so there's the idea of seed. So there's randomness based on the seed of the game, and then there's all this stuff. So basically, I don't really understand this, but it swaps a bunch of these numbers depending on the seed. And so there are 3 different types of noise. There's 0. So if I give it a 0, so this number right here, the noise type, if it's 0, it makes a tiles biome. So that's basically putting biomes that are one biome be next to the exact same biome of itself, kind of putting a chunk of biome tiles that are all the same biome. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain. And then there's the tile value. That's just basically putting a random tile that belongs to that biome on that tile. And then the second one's for determining waterways and basically just choosing random spots to put oceans. That is a mouthful, and if you don't understand, it's not the end of the world. This is me just kind of telling you how the game works. I've gone over file selection, and I've made a world and shown you around it. Dimension handling. So here's the idea of the dimension name. Basically, I'm going to remove this because that was for testing. This is like the very, very most recent thing I've made, and so this is remnants of me testing it. So that's basically what this class is it makes that little text that flows across the top of the screen telling you what dimension you're in. So that's this thing, the surface. Whoosh. Right, so that's what that is. And so if you go into a different dimension, so dimension 1 I've coded to be the surface, and dimension 2, basically the mining dimension is going to be a separate dimension. So when you make a mine, it's going to send you to a separate dimension that's basically just an underground dimension. Speaking of the mine, I never really showed that in the game, so I'll show you the crafting recipe for that really quick. So it's the only 3x3 recipe I have, so you have to be near a table. And then it's a pickaxe, and it's a bunch of stones like this. Craft. Mine. Boom. And then I'm not going to put a mine inside my house, I'm going to put it outside, and mine's right there. So then the idea is you right-click this mine, it brings you to the mining dimension. And I might change the way this looks. It kind of looks like a small mine, and I'm hoping to eventually have multi-blocks in the game, which means that you place a mine, and the mine maybe becomes 4 tiles, like a 2x2 of tiles. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to do that, how I'm going to do that, but I think that it is possible, and I've thought about it a little bit, so that's the plan. Mine is going to look like this, but it might just be bigger, if that makes sense. So that's the mining dimension kind of handled. Crafting, I think the crafting is very interesting and pretty easy. So basically every time I hit the C button, it runs this, which basically just attempts to craft. So shaped crafting recipes go at the top, so all of these are the shaped crafting recipes, and then the shapeless crafting recipes. If you put 2 stones anywhere in the crafting table, make a sharp stone, and then the tier 1 crafting works the same way. It doesn't matter which orientation you use to make that tier 1 crafting upgrade of stone, then wood, or wood first, then stone in the crafting. It'll make the tier 1 crafting. So that's shapeless recipes versus not shapeless. So if I go down here to the sharp stone, it uses a shapeless crafting method versus here you use the shape crafting to make the mine. And so here's some of the code. You can read through it, and if you really want to use it in your own games, you can. So this is the shaped crafting, and this is shapeless. All right, and so then whenever I make a crafting recipe, basically it shows up like this. So I'll show you more. So it makes more sense to be like that. And if I can find the mine works better that way. So basically all these numbers are the item IDs. So for the pickaxe, a 1 represents a stone, 4 represents a sharp stone, and 2 represents wood. So it's wood here, stone here, and sharp stone there, and then nothing over here. And then over here, the other thing, just to make the shape crafting recipes, the shape crafting method simpler, you give it how many of each item you need. So item ID, how many you want. So one item ID, how many you want. So one wood, and same thing for over here. But if I go down to show you the mine, it's 1 pickaxe and a bunch of stone. So it's how many stone? 7, because there's 7 here. And how many pickaxes? 1. And then you give that to the shape crafting, and it sees if you have it checks to see if you have the items in your inventory to make the craft, and to see if the crafting recipe you placed into it is correct. So yeah. Then you've kind of seen a lot of the stuff that's in the game. There's some collision if you've seen you can't cross an ocean. Eventually I'm going to also make boats in the game, and then you'll be able to cross an ocean. I might make a bridge tile that you can place only on water, and then that makes you able to go across the water. I haven't totally decided quite yet what I'm going to do to make it able to cross the water. I'm probably going to have both. But yeah, so speaking of new additions that are not in the game yet, I have plans to improve the crafting system. Basically making it more clear to someone who's not watching this video on this is actually the crafting. Maybe I'll put the word crafting here and maybe say press C. I'll like show somehow that says press the C button to do the craft. Also, I have plans to add a setting screen. Right now there's no settings because there's not much to change other than if you want to change your controls. It's basically mandatory to put in settings once I have music in the game, which I currently don't have music in the game, but I have plans and I have someone ready to make me music for the game. But I'll add settings once I actually have settings that need to be changed. right now, all I would do is controls. So I'll probably add the settings to change controls once the game is fully released. But improving the crafting system just kind of means making it more obvious that this little box here is the crafting area. And so right now I have it set up, if you left click, it unchecks the item, versus if you right click, it holds the item. And if you click a different item, it will switch that item and you can add it to the crafting. Versus if I click an item without having clicked the crafting recipe area, you can just swap items around in your inventory and, move them around. But if I click an item and then try to craft with it, using the right-click button, of course, and then switch to a different item, it's going to kind of think that I am still trying to do crafting. So it's not going to do a swap of the items, it's going to just change which one you have highlighted. But then if you don't go and do a craft, then you'll go and switch the items around. And I just have kind of plans to make it more obvious that pressing the C button does the craft. Maybe I'll also add like a little box that says, here's what you're going to end up crafting. Obviously, people won't really know what they're crafting unless we do that. So, yeah. And then we've talked about the mining dimension, of course. And then there's a bunch of new items that I have planned to make in the game. So, for example, I'm just going to have the game kind of running, and I'm going to just have the game being played in the background. So I have plans to make items that are, for example, if you want to have energy in the game, if you want to have like some sort of power grid and power system, want to have like machines that run on that power, I have plans to add that kind of thing to the game. Maybe solar energy, maybe wind energy, thermal energy, depending on what I add. Like, I don't where you're gonna get the heat from. Maybe we'll just burn some charcoal, do like a steam engine kind of idea. But we're gonna have energy used in the game somehow, and there's gonna be kind of like wires that will each tile. You might have a tile that's a wire that connects to electrical units. So I have plans to do that. And then there's also plans. Speaking of solar energy, there's gonna be a daylight cycle. So I'm planning to have it so that if you're playing the game for long enough, whatever time I choose, it'll basically switch to nighttime. And with that, there will be monsters that appear in nighttime. Now, you might think that that's kind of stealing ideas from Minecraft, which it's inspired from Minecraft, very much. And if you say stealing, I wouldn't tell you that you're completely wrong, but I'm going to have lighting systems, and it's going to be kind of just different. Monsters will appear. I'm not sure if light is going to be what makes mobs stop spawning, whereas in Minecraft, light will make mobs stop spawning. So I'm probably going to have some other different item, maybe something powered by the electricity that is just a beacon that stops mobs from being able to spawn in a certain area. And with that, there's going to be enemies, and there's going to be passive mobs, like a pig, a cow, maybe a sheep, whatever animal you can think of. I'll add whatever animals that I choose to the game. And then that's pretty much this whole devlog. So I hope you have enjoyed watching what the game's been about so far. And yeah, just stay tuned. This game, for now, the plan is to post it on itch.io and make it downloadable from there. It might end up on Steam. I might try to add it to Steam as well. But for now, itch.io is the plan. But yeah, I think that's all I can say about the game. I guess the only other thing that I haven't mentioned is that acorns don't do anything. They're literally useless at the moment. The only use they will have when I actually code in the use is that you'll be able to plant them, and they'll grow into trees. Otherwise, there's not really a use for them at the moment. So, yeah. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you have enjoyed just watching and seeing how the game has been progressing so far. If you have any questions, you want to know about some of my code, want to get some feedback, or just kind of learn how I did certain things in my game, I have not shown all the game. Like, there's all these classes in the game, and you can count them all, but there's close to 20, I'd guess. And each one has at least 100 lines of code. Like, if I go to the world generation, there's a lot of code there. Crafting recipes, there's quite a bit of code. but I've kind of limited each one to be hopefully 500 or less lines of code. But obviously there are going to be certain codes that are going to be different. The biggest one is the identifications. This is a static. It's a static class. Not necessarily the class is static, but every method in it is static, which means you basically just say identifications dot get inventory item name, and then give it your item. And if it's a 1, that corresponds to stone. If it's 2, corresponds to wood. And you can see, depending if you've looked through the game and you don't know what a certain item ID corresponds to, these are all the names that are in the game. And I guess the only thing I have left to show is here's how I have images in the game. So this is, they call it a sprite sheet. So here are all the different movements that the character can make, and if you scroll through the movements fast enough, it kind of looks like natural movement of the character. You know, so his leg looks broken here, but in the game it kind of looks natural, and because you don't see just this frame, you see it kind of combined with all the other frames. And here are all the items. So this is not necessarily a sprite sheet. It's more so just like a sheet that stores all the different items that can... These are what the items look like in your inventory. Versus here's what they look like placed down, and you can actually see that this is higher resolution. So this is a 32 by 32 for each tile, whereas over here I think I set it to be a 16 by 16 for each inventory item. And that you can kind of see it reflects based on that. And there's the background that I made. And that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed, and I guess I'll see you in the next devlog, which will probably be a release of the game of some sort. The first release, I don't expect there to be a huge amount in the game at that moment, but there will be updates. But the first release that people can actually start playing, I'm hoping to be by the time the next devlog comes out. And I can't give you a date. I'm sorry, but I don't know. I don't know when it's going to come out, but you'll be surprised to see it. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. And don't forget to keep on gaming.